Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about what it means to be an American. Keep in mind this video is not being made in a white or Jewish or LGBT spirit. And the reason why I bring this up is because they've been harassing me to try to advance their people's causes, even though most people on the planet, including from those groups, are religious to some degree. Because it takes a really stupid person to miss the fact that we're here on this planet for a reason. So I just watched a clip of a news discussion where they talk about how a senator at a conservative convention or conference talked about how he wanted to pass on his heritage to his children. That he believed that America was, that is the inheritance or the heritage, and it's a very skewed view he has, mind you, but the heritage of white nationalists. He doesn't believe, by his words, that people of color deserve the freedom of speech and freedom of expression, that they deserve a chance to be here, even though that person supposedly comes from a German family that immigrated here in the 1840s. When, for example, on my mom's side, not that I think it's important, but it does confound his point, my family supposedly came here on the Mayflower, like some of the first people to this country. And so it's very interesting that he thinks that someone like him has a right to be here and to express himself in a country where people came fleeing religious persecution, and they didn't all agree with each other, nor were they all pure white or something. People historically and generally are mixed, right? A lot of those people were mixed with Jewish, they're mixed with Jews, they're mixed with Jewish, and a lot of Jewish people, right, they're mixed with Ethiopian, they're mixed with Syrian and Babylonian and Assyrian and Egyptian and on and on and on. It was very interesting that he makes that argument. When the core culture of America is supposed to be the Constitution, and it's supposed to be a changing nation, whereas people integrate more in this multicultural nation, people become more biracial. That's the natural direction of a free and multicultural country. Why wouldn't it be? And historically, people who don't mix, they kind of get left behind. It's pretty straightforward. If you look at the history of Europe, Europeans were civilized from Southern Europe by civilizations who were taught how to be civilized by Egyptians, who also taught people in the Middle East, and almost certainly people from the Indus Valley Empire, the Harappan Empire over there in India. So just a basic understanding of history leads one to see why he's wrong. Pretty straightforward. So now I'm going to talk about the Universal Martial Code. Some people must consider this the greatest book ever made. And it's the greatest book ever made, perhaps. Maybe it's the other book I made, which I consider better than this in some ways. It's like a 5 or 6 page book. This one's maybe 3 pages. It's the greatest because I wrote it. And because unlike Moses and the authors of the Bible, you know that this is a book that I signed off on. Not the words per se, but the true ideas that are made clear. It's great not because the government interfered when I was making this. It's great because I was involved in it. And God is in me. But to miss the fact that God set me apart is stupid. We see in Proverbs, it says, you see someone who's skilled in his work, he'll serve before kings, not of officials of low rank. That's God commanding them to give me my rightful place, just like in Proverbs 16:12. The throne is established in justice, and I'm the King of Kings, and I determine who the best author is, and it's me. I didn't determine that from some kind of arrogance or something. I'm not an arrogant person. I became the top martial artist ever possible because I understand humility and discipline and wisdom and insight and sense more than everyone else. I live it more than everyone else. I convey in more intense form the true form. You see, I can easily correct this senator because I'm infinitely more important than he is. And I'm not saying this to insult the person. I hope he scrambles and obeys God through me in time, as much as God would want me to hope that. I live logic and not emotions. I might get angry at times, but my core direction is determined by logic and not emotions. So the point number one in my universal martial code, aka the divine rules of engagement and the divine principles of victory, says one must put the highest cause above all things. This means that character must be the central point, and true character only comes from universal pinpoint and moral precision, which, by the way, is my religion, my philosophy, my ideology. So you have to put the highest cause before all things. We go to, say, point number 7. Brute force is not divine force. The common fairy force that is so common all over the world and seems to come from the West is pathetic and childish. How much more when they pretend that being a fairy is divine? Look at the fairy nerd way that they historically depicted angels. Do they believe in the Tooth Fairy and Tinkerbell as well? Now, why did I put this in this extremely important book that even if no one else ever reads it, and some people have heard it, some other people have read it, but even if no one else had ever read it or heard it, that still, in God's eyes, one of the most important books ever written, one of the top 3, perhaps even number 1. Because you reap what you sow. It was people in the Western spirit, in the Jewish spirit, LGBT spirit, that were persecuted. And this is the Anglosphere, right? It's connected to England and the UK in that sort of way. Right? America speaks English, part of the Anglosphere, the English sphere, what have you. So God doesn't miss that for a moment. And one reaps what they sow. It leads us to the next point. Point number 8. Senseless violence is senseless, and their spirits get trampled by the spirit of sense-filled wisdom. However, having children these days and after is worse than senseless violence. So, in the news clip, she brought up that America was, and really is, historically a caste system that enforces the caste system through violence. And we just see the forms of violence change, right? Where it's not the Klan so much as people from their own race doing it to each other quite often because they're puppets of the white, Jewish, and LGBT governing class who, are guilty on a spectrum. A lot of people like to pretend that because they're not the most guilty rich person, that magically they're the good guy or something. They're not. Everyone who cheats me out of my right to lead is a bad person, wittingly or otherwise. So as we see the violence occur, we see that it's senseless violence. They're all cheating me out of my right to lead. The intangible heritage that God gave me is greater than the inheritance of mere white nationalists in a mere secular nation that has been corrupt the whole time. People who don't understand that are insane. Do you understand that righteousness is greater than wealth? For example, if I became wealthy, my righteousness would be greater than my money. Under all circumstances, my righteousness is greater than my money. The people don't understand that I consider retarded. I consider them retarded. Now, if you don't understand that my righteousness and my righteous inheritance is greater than their corrupt spirit and their corrupt inheritance from a corrupt nation with a corrupt government, how much more retarded are you than the person who doesn't understand that righteousness is greater than wealth? Pretty straightforward. That's why it's codified in the universal martial code. Why is it universal? Well, I use various examples to help people understand this. In the system of white supremacy, they don't look at things universally. They look at things relative to white people with an emphasis on the old money bloodlines, generally speaking, depending on what system of white supremacy we're talking about here. And it is very ignorant, right? That's not universal. That's relative to a bunch of stuck-up racist white people, right? What's universal is like 1 + 1 = 2 in basic arithmetic. What's universal is that water is wet at face value at least. What's universal is that it's wrong to kill for no reason. This senseless violence is wrong. That brute force is not divine force. That is universal. What's universal is that being the top martial artist is something that you earn from generational righteousness and individual righteousness with a consideration to the martial art order, which is a Royal African Falcon martial art order. It comes from Africa. We saw it expressed in a way that goes beyond other cultures and other races other nations, other religions, no offense to anybody, historically in Africa. See, Horus, the idea of Horus, when you say Horus, it's like saying, who's the true martial art king? We know it's not an English person. We know it's not a Jewish person. We know it's not an Asian person. We know it's not other races. We know it's not every black person. The idea of Horus is God's son, a Royal African Falcon martial artist. Now, because they play stupid about that, I have to bring that up again and again and again. Because I'm not speaking fairy language. I'm speaking universal, pinpointed, moral precision language, right? Morality, moral reality. So I have to clarify that, especially when I don't know how many videos people have seen. This might be the first video they've seen when they tune into this video, when they click on it. They say, what's going on here? What's he saying? That's what I'm saying. I'm not pointing to the church. I'm not pointing to, Jewish people or something. I'm not pointing to black supremacists. I'm pointing to God in what is universally and obviously His order. If you came into this world and you never read the Bible or the Torah or the Quran or any Hindu books and any Buddhist or Jain or Shinto, you look around and you do the math and you'd say, yes, God's order is a Royal African Falcon martial art order. Therefore, these other philosophies are there to confuse you. God, through nature, already tells you what the way is. But you're going to trust mere human beings with their conspiracies, with their nations, with their corrupt religions and their cults? Very stupid. You may as well trust a used car salesman in that manner. It's not logical. And if it's extremely important and you've committed to something that's not logical, then you're stupid and immoral. There's no other way to look at it. I'll give you another example. If somebody was coming to rape and kill your entire family and then eat them, and the church said, well, they had a vision, someone from the church, pick a church, any church, they had a vision that you should let them do it. And the top martial artist ever possible said, that's a lie. You shouldn't let them do it. Who would you listen to? Surely you know that universal pinpoint and moral precision is greater than some mere human being's claim of having a dream or a vision. Would you be doing your family justice if you listened to them and not me? It is that simple. And we see thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of religions and interpretations and translations. Only one of them comes from God through nature. That's part of why the whole Bible and the Torah and the Tanakh and the Quran can be summed up in one statement. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Why? Because God already tells you what you need to know through nature. If you have sense, you put it together. You see the spectrums. You know the difference between Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee and Van Damme and me. You know the difference between monks withdraw versus me responding, responsibility. If they've withdrawn from facing adversity, then they've withdrawn from the comparison and they've tapped out. Because martial arts are combat arts. They're not just to train techniques and have a religion somewhere. It's to accomplish something. So what is that? As you learn martial arts and you think about what you're learning, is it enough to take a Buddhist monk's word for why you're here? Is it enough to take a Christian monk's word? Or a Muslim's? Or Jews? No. Or Hindus? Or someone from a Native American religion? No. You have to look at it and use your head. When their religion came about, all of those people disagree with someone else. They said they're not right, and I think that this person is, or they think that they themselves are right. If standing in a room you saw the Three Stooges and you saw the top martial artist ever, and he's like, look, I'm much more intelligent than these people, but I don't even need to show you that. Ask yourself why God made me the top martial artist ever possible. Why did God make the sun? For a purpose, right? It causes plants to grow. It has certain effects on the moon and the earth and so on and so forth. It's even called the solar system. God made me the top martial artist ever possible to lead you on his path. That's why kings have a sword. That's why the Bible says, do you see someone skilled in his work? He will serve before kings, not officials of a low rank. And we see in Exodus 15:3, it says the Lord is a warrior. So even though they change the sound of my voice, they mess up, the sound quality of my videos, you got to ask yourself, are you an idiot that's going to insult God and use that as an excuse to listen to some pretty boy in the church who has his tail tucked? Perhaps you'll listen to some idiot from a church who has members listening to me right now, working for the government, who are far too afraid and demonic, far too misled to rally and obey God through me. That's how great the gap is. It's infinitely great. So as they seek to sabotage people and say, look at me, God has spoken through me definitively. And on top of that, the most famous symbol of Christianity is Christ on a cross. On a cross, not in a suit. Not dressed all pretty. When in the Bible, when Christ talks about John the Baptist, he says, what did you go out to see? Somebody in fancy clothes? He's like, they're in palaces. The prophets are manning up. And they're probably not in fancy clothes. But who is God's son? The top martial artist. That's me. In some of my pictures and videos, I'm wearing a martial art outfit. In almost every other one, I'm wearing simple clothes. And right now, I'm wearing clothes that are torn up because the government sabotages me to disrespect me just like their Roman predecessors. Because their culture is neo-Roman, neo-colonialist, a great disgrace. When they mock Jesus and put a crown of thorns on his head. All these churches in America right now sit there tail tucked while God commands them to rally to me. While people from their organizations mock me. That's why no matter what happens, I will never, ever, ever be proud to be born in America, ever. The cowardice I've seen here is so disgusting. When you think of it, nothing is more disgusting than that. And you, Capernaum, will you be lifted to the heavens? And you, America, will you be lifted to the heavens? Or did you go out like punks following the woke crowd, the LGBT crowd, Democrats, Republicans, white supremacists, Jewish supremacists? I suggest you read Galatians 3 and 4 several times and take notes. You're following Jerusalem of this world that correlates to Mount Sinai that's lost in sin. Sinai. Sin. While I have triumphed over these fools, I have conquered these cowards. Right now they're doing some kind of gang stalking thing where they're raising their voice across the street. Punks. They want to debate me? Or they want to try to act bad like some knucklehead in the military, like Hagaseth or something, doing push-ups, looking like a punk. Rubio. Looks like the type of guy dressed up like a schoolgirl when no one's looking. They call that manning up. I call telling the truth about these things and obeying God in the divine order manning up. They call some sissy Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, heel-clicking, Peter Pan punk stuff manning up. And they think that I should follow these worms? Clearly, regardless of what religion you are, you must surely know that everyone should follow me.